Now, it defies the laws of political gravity that following 14 years of Tory rule, a new government could be this unpopular.
It's another bad day for Keir Starmer, and it keeps getting worse. Starmer's failed promises and the Labour Party's rushed antics led to a massive protest outside the House of Commons. Will advancing the assisted dying bill cause more animosity towards Starmer, or will the political reset be a turning point for the Labour Party?
But it is vital that they are heard, as they are at the heart of this debate, and they show that the law is failing people. And where that is the case, we have a duty to do what is right to fix it. Yeah. For those who are here today or watching at home, they are dealing with the very real consequences of the failings of the current system.
Kim Leadbeater began a lively and lengthy debate regarding the assisted dying bill. The debate, which lasted 5 hours, was then put to a free vote in the House of Commons. Leadbeater commenced the debate by tugging at the heartstrings of her colleagues and sharing stories filled with pain and suffering. Leadbeater did a marvellous job enticing emotional responses from MPs. She made sure that everyone sitting in the House of Commons acknowledged the horrific ways terminally ill patients have adopted to end their lives.
As a fully funded 100% suicide service, but palliative care will only be funded at 30% at best. The former member for Dunfermline East, Gordon Brown, has said recently, we need to show we can do better at assisted living before deciding whether to legislate on ways to die.
The debate was very emotional and delicate, as many arguments, both in the pro and con side, brought forward personal stories and real-life cases. Few MPs shared stories of personal suffering in lieu of showing hope and resilience. For a free vote, the debate was more civil and structured than many expected. Even though there were disagreements, every member was conscious of the topic at hand, and the one major thing everyone agreed on was that the bill needs tremendous work and changes.
Canada, I will in a moment. These medics I met in Canada, specialists in assisted death, who personally kill hundreds of patients a year in their special clinics. And if honourable members have a difficulty with the language, then I wonder what they're doing here. This is what we are talking about, and I met doctors for whom this is their profession and their job.
The loudest voice against the advancement of the bill was obviously Danny Kruger, who led the debate against the advancement of the dying bill. With his harsh words, Danny Kruger made sure that everyone was aware of the negatives of assisted death. His main concern revolved around the lack of assessment and scrutiny the bill faced, since the actual text of the bill was only published a mere 2 weeks before the debate. According to Kruger, the bill wasn't in a state where it should have been advanced or discussed, but rather worked on. His main point was that something of this nature be discussed after public consultation and proper impact assessment was made.
They'll vote against, and I hope that's what happens. We either have to improve this bill, because it's full of dangers, both for immediate patients, as it were, who could be dragged into the scope of the bill, but also for our society as a whole. If we can improve the bill, then I'm sure that
most, if not all, of the votes supporting the bill were cast on the condition that it undergoes safeguarding, thorough research and revisions to its current form. Without these changes, MPs have indicated that they will oppose the bill in its second stage.
I genuinely believe that, and I appeal to Wes Streeting, in a sense, to put his money where his mouth is. He has said patients will be coerced into taking their life through lack of care. Well, he's the Health Secretary. Wes Streeting, what are you now going to do about it?
The proposal of this bill caused many to ask questions, and there have also been a lot of fingers being pointed at Wes Streeting, the Secretary of Health and Social Care, along with the constant fingers that seem to be pointed at Keir Starmer. It seems appalling that the Health Secretary has the guts to stand up and say, yes, we are failing palliative care. Yes, people are suffering, but he does not have the spine to actually bring forth changes. As someone who voted against the assisted dying bill, it is surprising that he did not take any initiative or bring forward alternatives to assisted death.
Told voters that Labour would fix public services, not by tax rises or borrowing, but from growth. And yesterday's budget completely undermined, ran totally counter to that argument and that promise. Why should people trust you?
An online petition asking for general elections has now gained 2.9 million signatures and is scheduled to be debated in Westminster Hall on the 6th of January 2025. The petition states, I believe the current Labour government have gone back on the promises they laid out in the lead up to the last election. The biggest promise made by the Labour Party was that they would fix the country's economic position without tax rises or borrowing, but their actions have had an adverse effect.
That a priority. So tough but fair decisions. But look, I wouldn't swap a single day in opposition for a day in power. It's much better to be in power to do things rather than the frustration, as I found it, in opposition for all of those long years where we were just able to say what we would do, like making an offence.
Yes, which is much easier than actually being in there.
So last time I sat on 18 months ago, I said this is what we would do. So good to be able to come back and say this is what I am doing.
What's interesting is you say tough but fair. That's what you just...
Although the Labour manifesto assured citizens that Starmer wouldn't be hitting the payslips of working people, the hike in national insurance introduced by him has done exactly that. The ongoing farmers' protest is another example of Labour's failed promise. According to Starmer, the average taxpayer must also be taxed additionally if they choose to send children to private schools. Starmer is showcasing his ability to move money from one place to another by investing this additional tax amount into the state education system.
The question is, what are your priorities? For me, the priorities are fixing the NHS.
Right,
and making sure working people are better.
And you've mentioned the NHS quite a few times, which is lovely to know, because that will, if you get that right, that will help
what a huge difference that will make.
For generations.
Yeah, for generations to come. Shoplifting. I mean, and we've just talked, you know...
Even though Starmer has been on record stating that NHS is his top priority, his approach to the dying bill spoke otherwise. Questions have been raised regarding the necessity of the bill at this time. According to the Labour manifesto, Keir Starmer had promised many other policies that would be taken care of regarding NHS and the palliative care system. Shouldn't Medcare be improved before the process of death is spoken about? Starmer has quite the plan to better NHS, which is very much needed, but the way he has approached it seems futile. NHS will require billions in funding for it to reach the level of promises made by Starmer. This would have been well and good if Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves hadn't already promised no more borrowing or tax increase.
In diversity. So this is the Labour policy here. This seems to me like an incredible deflection to me that suddenly they're blaming the right for this.
Yeah, look, you cannot trust Keir Starmer's words. What I've noted of Keir Starmer is every politician may be slightly elastic with the truth, you can say. But Keir Starmer is very, very comfortable lying to the British public. And he is simply...
The fingers pointed at Keir Starmer do not shock anyone. As a party that 80% of the national public did not vote for, it is very natural that questions are being thrown at the Labour Party. Even the decline of confidence that people had in Starmer causes no shock to him or anyone else. And maybe that is what is wrong. Keir Starmer seems to have gotten comfortable in a position where he does not mind being disliked. His devil-may-care attitude might just be what leads to his downfall.
He will not control immigration. He's promised to smash the gangs and stop illegal migration from France. They've only increased. So there's no way his party or even his own self will allow him to control immigration. He believes in the global citizen, not the British citizen.
But yet he has all...
After all, the petition asking for general elections took an alarming speed, having gained over 2.9 million signatures in a matter of hours. The anger that Starmer's failed promises and his reforms have caused was seen very clearly on online platforms as well as on the streets. Even during the protest for assisted death, many voices from both sides questioned Keir Starmer and his failing NHS-related promises. In a perfect world, the public would be able to agree on every single issue, but alas, in the world we live in, the majority of opinion has the upper hand. And in this case, it seems that the majority has started leaning towards a Nigel Farage and Elon Musk-backed government, rather than with those sitting at Downing Street.
Clothes, glasses, accommodation and concert and football tickets worth over £100,000, far more than any of his peers in the House of Commons. We had the assault on pensioners and farmers, neither of which were in the manifesto. And Rachel Reeves' October budget is starting to make Liz Truss's mini budget look like a masterclass in prudent economics, given that
The anger with Keir Starmer's government isn't just with the fact that his proposed tax rises or budget plans are failing. The anger stems from the fact that none of his proposed plans were included in his earlier manifesto. In the eyes of the public, Keir Starmer takes the role of someone who will say anything to get into office. When you combine that with Angela Rayner's recent remarks, Rachel Reeves' inability to take criticism, and Louise Haybuck's sudden resignation, Keir Starmer's position as Prime Minister looks extremely unreliable.
Keir Starmer criticised open borders and that crazy figure of over 1 million people entering the UK in 2023 alone. Even though he himself has previously blocked measures to get numbers down, and he axed the Rwanda plan, our only deterrent to stop the boats. And as the closure of Ellesmere Port demonstrates, this government's pursuit of net zero is going to hurt business.
The biggest joke is Keir Starmer going back on his own principles and criticising open borders. How can he, within a span of a few months, go from axing the Rwanda plan to questioning the increase in people entering the UK? Either he has forgotten his own words or hopes the public forgets them.
I don't think it's going to work. I think it's an admission of guilt. It's so embarrassing that he's even planning this thing, and he's claiming that it's been in the works for ages and wasn't conducted in the last few weeks. But I think it's a sort of admission that things have gone horribly wrong, and people are going to see it for what it is. It's going to fall flat.
Wouldn't any government have a bumpy ride with their inheritance? Whether it's the economy, broken public services, international wars, haven't they inherited an almighty mess?
They have, and God knows they've told us that 1,000 times. But how many governments sort of then plan this sort of reboot 4 months in? It's almost like he's saying...
Even his new reset of government has caused controversy and made him less popular among the public. After all, who wants to support a government that has to reboot in less than 6 months of taking office? The refresh might have key takeaways, or it might not. But it will definitely not just be an admission of guilt. It will also be an invite and an all-access free pass to see how unreliable and unstructured Keir Starmer and the Labour government actually are.
Government. It didn't expect to win, actually, until very late in the day. Second, I think the government lacks talent. And I think the government also lacks, particularly Starmer himself, people with political instincts. And a lot of the mistakes they've made would not have been made by Blair and the people around him, who had long-standing political instincts. Starmer's new to politics, remember.
So Keir Starmer needs Peter Mandelson, a John Prescott, and Alistair Campbell.
People like...
Even after having more than a decade to prepare as the opposition, the Labour government continues to behave as amateur politicians. Maybe that is because Sir Keir Starmer is actually considered an amateur politician. So much so that recent polls suggest him being less popular than Donald Trump among UK voters. If we even for a second forget about the current situation of the Labour government and think about the future, unless Keir Starmer can use a magic wand and make all his party's issues disappear, this Labour government will not be elected for another term.
Won the battle of ideas, and it's not working, and they know it's not working. It's not working economically, but more importantly, it's not working with the British public.
Well, that's an interesting point. Is Keir Starmer more Harold Wilson than Tony Blair, Michael?
Well, I suppose in those... he is in a way in that he is basically a political opportunist. Yeah. And Blair had more of a clear idea of... he had certain principles and...
At this point, Keir Starmer has reminded everyone time and again that he took office when situations were dire, or that his party inherited a failing situation. While many agree with his statement, most, if not everyone, agree that the Labour Party is using this as an excuse to hide behind when anything goes the wrong way. Whether it be related to the economic situation or public reforms, if their plan isn't working, the Labour government have only one excuse, that they inherited a bad situation. Labour MPs seem incapable of taking accountability. It will be interesting to see Sir Keir Starmer become the first Labour MP in a long time to stand and take ownership of his mistakes while speaking on the refresh.
A whole different set of values. And we saw this with Donagate, didn't we? This sort of idea of Keir Starmer on one hand being morally upstanding, criticising Boris Johnson and others for impropriety in office, while secretly taking donations from Lord Alley, making sure that Sue Gray had sorted him out with a Downing Street pass. So it's one thing in public and another thing in private.
Although, if we take into account the hypocrisy of Keir Starmer regarding Louise Haig's prior conviction, then we shouldn't expect any accountability from him. The same person who holds other parties' members in scrutiny fails to do that with his own party. Sattermer believes that the same rules shouldn't apply to him. Appointing a convicted felon to cabinet after he was so vocal, so passionate in saying lawmakers shouldn't be lawbreakers, where are his morals?
And a lower unfavourability rating. Is it possible, I know where you stand on this, but let's be realistic, is it possible to break that Labour-Tory duopoly and have a third party win an election?
Well, Nigel Farage has put it like this. I think every kind of, let's say, 500 years or something like that, there's a moment where the public wake up and they start to realise.
It seems that protesters and Nigel Farage are also tired of searching for the Prime Minister's morals and have taken matters into their own hands. With 2.9 million plus signatures on a petition for the call of general elections, time will tell if this reset will give Keir Starmer breathing space or if it will decrease the confidence the public has in him.